My sister Amanda sat in a lawn chair, scrolling through her phone. This was the annual Thompson family barbecue. Everyone came. The same faces, the same conversations, the same barely concealed judgment when they looked at me. I was 31 years old, and in their eyes I was still the family disappointment. "Sarah, honey, could you bring out the condiments?" Mom called from the kitchen window. I nodded and headed inside, grateful for a moment away from the crowded yard. When I returned with mustard and ketchup bottles, Marcus was holding court near the grill, telling some story about his latest promotion at the marketing firm. Everyone listened with appropriate admiration. Jennifer touched his arm adoringly. Their oldest son, 12-year-old Tyler, stood beside his father with that same self-satisfied expression Marcus always wore. I set the condiments on the table and reached for a paper plate. "Charity cases eat last," Tyler announced, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. He grinned at his siblings who giggled behind their hands. The conversation didn't stop exactly, but it faltered. A few people glanced over, then quickly looked away. Marcus heard his son but said nothing, just flipped another burger with a slight smile playing at his lips. Jennifer actually laughed, a quick little sound she tried to hide behind her hand. My father, standing near the cooler with a beer, met my eyes for a second. He looked away first. I held Tyler's gaze for a moment. He was 12. He'd learned this somewhere. Kids don't invent casual cruelty on their own. They absorb it from the adults around them. "Understood," I said quietly. I set the empty plate back on the stack and walked toward the side gate. "Sarah, don't be dramatic," Amanda called out. "He's just a kid." I didn't answer. The gate clicked shut behind me and I heard someone laugh, the sound carrying on the hot summer air. My apartment was 40 minutes away. I changed clothes and sat on my couch, staring at my phone. I'd moved past anger years ago. Now I just felt tired. My phone buzzed at 9:30 that night. "Dad, the business needs your investment. Can we talk tomorrow?" I stared at the message for a long time. Thompson and Associates, the consulting firm my father had built over 30 years. Marcus was VP of Operations. Amanda handled HR. It was a family operation, except they'd never offered me a position. 3 years ago, when their Western expansion was failing, Dad had mentioned they needed capital. Anonymous investors would be fine. I'd moved $800,000 through my investment firm into the company. Over 2 years I'd added another $4.2 million. I owned 37% of Thompson and Associates. Dad owned 41. Marcus had 15. Amanda had 7. They had no idea. The paperwork listed my holdings under Sterling Capital Group. I typed back, "Never again." Then I opened my email and composed a message to my investment manager, David Chin at Sterling Capital. Effective immediately, I want to divest all holdings in Thompson and Associates. Begin the process tomorrow morning. I want clean separation within 30 days. I hit send and turned off my phone. The next morning I went to work. I was a financial analyst for a mid-sized investment firm, a job my family considered barely adequate. Glorified accountant, Marcus had called it once. What they didn't know was that I'd been managing my own investment portfolio since I was 24, that I'd turned a modest inheritance from my grandmother into a net worth that would have shocked them into silence. My phone stayed off until lunch. When I turned it on, there were 7 missed calls from my father and 4 from Marcus. 11 text messages. I deleted them without reading and called David. "It started," he said without preamble. "I contacted their primary accountant this morning with notice of intent to divest. Per the shareholder agreement, we're required to give them first right of refusal on the shares, but at fair market value. I had an independent valuation done last month. Your 37% stake is worth approximately $11.4 million at current valuation. How long until they figure out who owns the shares? They know now. I spoke with Richard Thompson directly an hour ago. He asked me to have you call him. What did you tell him? That you were unavailable and all communications should go through my office. Perfect. Proceed with the divestment." That evening my father showed up at my apartment. I watched through the peephole as he knocked, waited, knocked again. His face looked gray. After 5 minutes he left. The messages started coming faster. Mom, Marcus, Amanda, even Jennifer. All variations of the same theme. "We need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. Family doesn't do this to family. Family doesn't do this to family." I thought about Tyler's grin. About Jennifer's laugh. About my father looking away. On day 3, David called with an update. Thompson and Associates doesn't have the liquid capital to buy you out at fair market value. Their bank is refusing to extend additional credit for a shareholder buyout. Marcus Thompson called me this morning, somewhat agitated. He suggested you might accept a lower valuation in the interest of family harmony. What did you say? I told him shareholder agreements don't have family harmony clauses. I smiled despite myself. What are their options? They can attempt to secure outside investment to buy you out, which will take time and likely require them to take on a new partner. They can attempt to secure a business loan using company assets as collateral, which their bank has already indicated is unlikely given their current debt load. Or they can find another buyer for your shares, which means bringing in an outside investor who might want board representation. How long can this process take? Given their financial situation, could be 60 to 90 days to resolve. In the meantime, you still own 37%, which means they can't make major business decisions without your approval. Make sure they understand that last part. On day 5, my mother came to my office. The receptionist called back uncertain. There's a Patricia Thompson here? She says she's your mother. Tell her I'm in meetings all day. I watched from the conference room window as Mom stood in the lobby, her purse clutched in both hands, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. After 20 minutes, she left. The messages shifted tone. Anger crept in. How could I do this? After everything they'd done for me? Did I know what this would do to the business? To their employees? To the family? I didn't respond to any of it. On day 8, Marcus showed up at my apartment building. He waited in the parking lot for 3 hours. I stayed inside watching from my window as he paced, made phone calls, sat in his car with his head in his hands. Eventually he left. That same evening, David forwarded me an email chain. Thompson and Associates' primary lender, First National Bank, had requested an emergency meeting. The loan officer wanted clarification on the ownership structure change and how it might impact their outstanding credit lines. The bank was concerned about stability. This is standard procedure when there's significant ownership flux. David explained when I called him. But it's putting pressure on them. The bank won't make any moves on new lending until the ownership situation stabilizes. How does that affect them? They have a major equipment lease coming up for renewal next month. Without bank approval, they'll have to pay cash or let the lease lapse. Their entire infrastructure runs on leased servers. I processed that information silently. David continued. I also received a call from their corporate attorney, Linda Morrison. She wanted to know if there was any way to resolve this that didn't involve outside investors. She seemed quite worried about the firm's future. What did you tell her? That my client's decision was final. On day 10, their largest client sent a letter. David forwarded it to me. Greystone Industries, a manufacturing company that provided 32% of Thompson and Associates' annual revenue, wanted assurance that the consulting firm's ownership changes wouldn't affect service quality. They were considering their options. Marcus must have been panicking. David called on day 12. They found a potential buyer for your shares. A private equity firm called Westmore Partners. They're offering $10.8 million. Slightly below our valuation but within a reasonable range. Westmore wants 2 board seats as part of the deal. What does that mean for Thompson and Associates? It means your father and brother will have to answer to outside investors for the first time. Major decisions will require board approval. Westmore will want quarterly performance reviews, efficiency audits, probably some restructuring. What did they say? Richard Thompson asked if you would reconsider. He said he was sorry about what happened at the barbecue. He said that to you? Yes. He seemed quite distressed. I thought about that for a long time after we hung up. Sorry about what happened at the barbecue. As if it was a singular incident, not a pattern stretching back years. On day 15, Amanda managed to corner me at a coffee shop near my office. I didn't see her until she was already sitting across from me. You're destroying Dad's legacy, she said without preamble. Her eyes were red. Over a stupid comment from a child. This isn't about Tyler. Then what is it about? Money. Because we can work out a payment plan. We can find a way to buy you out that doesn't involve selling to vultures. It's not about money either. Then what, Sarah? What do you want? I looked at her directly. I want you to think about every family gathering for the past 10 years. Every dinner, every holiday, every barbecue. I want you to count how many times someone made a comment about my job, my apartment, my life choices. I want you to remember how many times you laughed along or said nothing, or told me not to be so sensitive. We were joking. You were joking. I was being erased. Amanda's face crumpled. This will ruin Dad. The business is his whole life. He should have thought about that before he taught his grandson that some family members are worth less than others. She left without another word. The deal with Westmore Partners closed on day 28. I received a wire transfer for $10.8 million. David sent me the final paperwork and a brief note. Clean separation achieved. Thompson and Associates now has 2 board members from Westmore Partners. They're implementing an immediate operational review. The first board meeting happened 3 days later. David had contacts at Westmore and heard the details. The 2 new board members, Catherine Rodriguez and James Park, had come prepared with questions. They wanted to see 5 years of financial statements, complete employee performance reviews, justification for every executive salary, and a detailed analysis of client retention rates. My father had presented the company's history, the relationships he'd built, the reputation they'd maintained. Catherine listened politely, then asked why their profit margins had declined 3% over 2 years despite revenue growth. Marcus tried to explain their expansion strategy. James asked why they'd expanded into territories with lower profit potential when their core market still had room for growth. Amanda's HR department was questioned extensively. How many employees? What was the turnover rate? Why did they need 3 full-time HR staff for a 40-person company? Amanda stammered through her responses. The meeting lasted 4 hours. At the end, Catherine outlined Westmore's expectations. Detailed quarterly reports, efficiency improvements, possible restructuring. The phrase possible restructuring hung in the air like a threat. I heard through the family grapevine, cousins and aunts who still reached out occasionally, that Marcus had actually cried in the parking lot after that meeting. Jennifer had to drive him home. Dad had been silent for days, just sitting in his home office, staring at papers. The business would survive, David assured me. Westmore specialized in turning around mid-sized firms. They'd make it more efficient, probably more profitable. But it wouldn't be the Thompson family business anymore. It would be a company that happened to employ some Thompsons. My father now had to present quarterly performance goals to people who didn't care about his 30-year legacy, only about return on investment. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt quiet. 3 months after the barbecue, I received a letter. Actual paper in the mail. My father's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a single page. Sarah, I understand now what we did. What I did. I taught my children and grandchildren that success looks a certain way, and anyone who didn't fit that picture wasn't worth the same respect. I taught them that some people eat first and some people eat last. I'm sorry it took losing everything to see how wrong I was. I know this apology doesn't fix anything. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand. The business will survive. We'll adapt to our new reality. But I've lost something more important than Thompson and Associates. I've lost my daughter. That's my fault, not yours. I hope someday you find peace with whatever you decide about us. Dad. I put the letter in a drawer and didn't respond. 6 months later, Tyler sent me a message on social media. Just 3 words, I am sorry. I stared at it for a long time. He was 13 now. Maybe old enough to understand. Maybe not. I typed back, thank you for saying that. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just acknowledgement that words matter, that cruelty has consequences, that charity cases sometimes hold all the cards. I never went back to another family barbecue. But sometimes late at night I thought about what David had said about family harmony clauses, how shareholder agreements are built on clear terms and fair valuations, not on blood relations and assumed loyalty. Maybe that was the lesson. Maybe the real charity had been mine all along, pretending that their version of family was worth the price of my dignity. I'd stopped paying that debt. And I'd never been wealthier.